Hello, and welcome to Arne and Valerie. Thanks very much for all getting us getting together today. And just to introduce everybody, so Valerie, thank you for coming on this morning. So Valerie, you're the founder of the design agency, creative design agency Intent. And I know you specialise particularly in customer experience and employee experience. Yes. So thanks very much for being able to join in today and share your experience and knowledge. And to introduce Arne, so you are based in Amsterdam and the founder of the Design Thinkers Academy there. So a great conversation hopefully today between the three of us about if we look at the current situation where we are, what's happened to get us where we are, and also where we may be going in the future. Really interested just to unpack a bit. If we look at the principles of design thinking, what could we have done differently? What could we be doing differently now? And actually, what can we learn for the future that would really help us get to a better place out of all of this confusion and upheaval? But before we start in, just Arne, would you like to just sort of share a bit about what your background is?
Yeah, sure. So, because my brain also already went into your first part, like how could we have done things differently?
Oh, go for it.
So like, oh, I know. Oh, who am I actually? Well, my name is so. But there's a link between the two. I started Design Thinkers. Actually, it's a holding company, Design Thinkers, in Amsterdam about 15 years ago. Where you know, when actually design thinking didn't really exist, so there wasn't really any buzzword or anything at all, and we were focusing on service design, which is the same thing, but it's two different schools of thought or camps or whatever you want to call it. But it originated from Europe, and service design and design thinking kind of started merging a couple of years ago, and I started becoming really interested in teaching more than developing sort of services or products or experiences. I kind of started being very interested in teaching people how to do it instead of doing it myself. And I have a design background, and I also have a background in theater and photography and many things. But I really started realizing that a lot of the organizations that we were working for couldn't really outsource the skills. They couldn't really outsource innovation. They couldn't really outsource building empathy with their end user. They really had to do it themselves. So this is where we started the Academy about 9 years ago, I guess, saying, well, actually, we're not going to do it for you. We're going to teach you how to do it. And that kind of resonated with our clients a lot, which was sort of, for us, a very important moment where we kind of felt that, and that's actually when things took off. Also, it was the time that design thinking all of a sudden came basically from the US as a sort of a language, which kind of merged with design, sort of service design in Europe and UX and the whole thing. So there's a whole bunch of buzzwords floating around, which we were kind of in the middle of all of that, which is sometimes confusing, sometimes very helpful. We called ourselves Design Thinkers, well, by chance, because I learned from a professor from Stanford about this sort of this rumor at Stanford that it was called design thinking, but I couldn't find anything on Google, but it sounded really cool. So it's been an interesting ride, and it's actually for me, and the link to you know, your first part on this whole COVID-19 period is that there has been a change. I started Design Thinkers because I felt there was a big wave coming, or it was already there, and that wave, I wanted to be part of that wave or be close to the wave, and design thinking was just basically, you know, it's called a surfboard or something that allowed me to ride the wave, and that's basically what it still feels like. So it's a way to kind of ride that wave, and that wave changed or became bigger, or there was an addition to it, which is called COVID-19 or Corona. And so I think that's the for me, that's sort of my journey. And design thinking is just a good language to allow myself to be part of that wave.
Yeah. Interesting, right. And just to sort of set the scene from your perspective, Valerie, what's your angle on how and the thinking in terms of where we are today?
I was trained as an industrial designer. Essentially, I chose those studies because I enjoyed drawing and creating, and but I also wanted to combine it with an university degree. And after working a couple of years as an industrial designer, I realized that there's a saying by designers. They say first you have to discover what is the thing to design, so design the right thing, and then afterwards you have to design it right. And during my professional years, I discovered that in order to design the right thing, you really have to understand who you're designing it for. And I always had an interest in interaction, psychology of people, interaction between people, and these two interests of mine, which I always thought that were very separate from each other, really came together when I realized that design was not about status, or was not about aesthetics or anything, but it had to do with, a human-centered approach of solution finding, and the idea of co-creating something and of allowing yourself to learn by trial and error was something that was really appealing to me. And it's true what Arne says, design has evolved a lot during the last 10 years, and many people now understand that it is a way of thinking, a way of tackling problems that can be applied to many fields and many subjects, and many difficult and complicated problems as well. So yes, I was really interested when you were asking the question about with Corona, how could we have done things, how are we doing things, and what lessons can we take on to the future? That's really an interesting question to think about.
Yes, and it's interesting what you're both saying there, because so I've come at it from a slightly different angle. My background is very much in sort of business change, business transformation, sort of management consultancy type of change piece. But I've always found myself going towards the aspect of how people are interacting, and therefore if a change works or doesn't work, it's so much to do with the relationships that are going on, the sort of, and the communication that's going on between different parties, whether it's in a company or wherever, any that sort of whole change journey. And so when looking at now where we are, and obviously it's different from in the Netherlands and Belgium and UK, we're all slightly different places to do with the Corona itself. Think about now of your experience with your clients in the workplace. If you look back, what things have happened that actually either design thinking would, if you'd started, obviously greater using hindsight, but if we'd started again at the beginning, what would you definitely not do or recommend that your government should or shouldn't do, versus what actually happened in each of your countries, just as an example, so using those principles of how to get people through, designing a way through this enormous change that has been going on.
I have to say, and this is very unusual for a Belgian, because usually a Belgian will complain about its government, and in fact we don't even have a government at the moment, but anyway, I think they've done quite well. It's astonishing, because it was an overwhelming situation in the beginning. Of course, there was confusion about what was really going on. A lot of people didn't grasp the severity of the situation, etc. And that is really what they call a wicked problem. It's as a government having to guide your population and make your population do change their lives in a very significant way, and do it quickly. How do you manage that? And you can see that they did some trial and error. They have, well, I can only speak for Belgium, but they, in the beginning, they had to be quite severe, and they had to be harsh, because there was no much room for improvisation at the time. People had to be informed, and we had to take into account the worst possible scenario and go from there. And then afterwards, what we've seen is that they've taken on information from different groups, different stakeholders, and changed their way of doing along the way. That caused a lot of confusion, it's true, but they've tried to communicate as well as good as possible during the last few weeks. And it's true that there have been mistakes and that there has been confusion, but as Belgians, we are known not to always follow the rules. And I am surprised at the level that Belgians have kept up with the restrictions that were implied on us. Yeah.
Interesting.
So yes, and there's a couple of elements, like taking into account the perspective of different stakeholder groups. That is always considered in design thinking as being a measure of a means to success. Not knowingly, I think it wasn't as if the government in Belgium really said we're going to do this the design thinking way, but they have taken into account different stakeholders, and it was learning by doing for the government.
Have you seen a similar sort of thing in the Netherlands?
Yes, I guess so. Well, I'm kind of really thinking about you know, your question, because whether I can relate that to design thinking, or what we would call design thinking, or a creative process, or a learning process, or one thing that is similar in the Netherlands, I guess, is that there was a poll which showed that that's like when the crisis really was at its worst. I think which is really weird. That's only in dictatorship that this happens. It's like 90% of the population thought the government was doing a good job. So we're like, what's going on? That's not true. Like, it's impossible. But so that's kind of weird. But it had something to do with our prime minister being someone also saying, literally, so which kind of, for most of the people in the Netherlands, probably kind of felt as very honest, and because he said he didn't know either, you know, what was the right choice. So that sounds very trivial, almost like, oh yeah, because nobody. But for a politician, you know, there's lots of other politicians in other countries who will never say that they don't know.
Oh yeah, we have a few of those. Yeah.
We know some examples, right? So that kind of helped a lot. Like someone saying, well, you know, I also don't know, but I'm going to base my decisions on science. And then the scientists also said, well, you know, we base our decision on the best available information that we have, and this is the information we have, and based on that, we think it's better to do this. And then we were like, yeah, okay, what I think I would have chosen the same things, so the same option. So they did a really good job, because also the Dutch are usually not that compliant. Usually they're not, but they were, and they did in that way they did the communication part really well. I think because it's not over, and so kind of early days to say whether they are going to do a good job, you know, from now on, because now a lot of people are like, well, we are kind of fed up with this thing, and all right, can we go back to normal? I want to be back in my traffic jam again on Monday. Can I please do? don't know why, but they want to. So they want to go back to normal because they are, they're missing the life previous to this COVID-19 period. So I think it is early days, but I feel that it's going to be quite exciting to see what the country does when the financial crisis is going to take its toll. It's happening. A lot of people are, a lot of the small businesses are going out of business. People are, they'll be. They'll be poor, they'll be, not satisfied with what happened. So there's a lot of questions because not all decisions were kind of after the fact, like, why did we do this? Or did that really make sense? We were protecting the elderly, but at the same time, we're putting them in homes where they did get contaminated and then they had to die alone because we were protecting them. What? I'm sorry. So there's a lot of questions. So which is kind of, so I don't, again, I totally agree with the decisions that were made in the sense that if I would have been in that position, whoa, that's like, how do you do it? So they did that really well. Whether they were the right decisions and how much they're going to pay for that, the political price, I don't know. It seems like there's no, at least in my country, there are no other politicians who could have done it better. So I think they're okay in that sense. It's, anyway, so I think that's there. But there's something else which I think is way more interesting if you wanted to connect this to design thinking and this this mindset. I think that the fact that this was such a big problem showed that we were not prepared to be flexible. Our hospitals, just one thing, like, remember I don't know, you might, they're not, that's not an active list anymore in the Netherlands. I'm not sure if that's in the UK the case still, but you have the essential workers. Remember the list of essential workers? Actually, I'm not on that list, right? So I'm not a need to have. I'm a nice to have. I'm not a need to have. The need to have people, the people who are keeping our country afloat, the people who are, the ones that we said, oh, you can't stop working because you're essential. Most of the people on that list were the people that we always said, well, they shouldn't pay. They're always demonstrating for more pay, for more, no, those are the nurses. They can do the job, with less hours, half of the time, they get less. So these are the people that were always under pressure. We were always kind of looking down on them, almost literally. That's something that, in my mind, it's a society that really doesn't understand what is important and how to kind of move into a future. This is artificial intelligence trying to tell me to shut up. This is sort of the, I think that's the mental model where we are kind of being confronted with, that is wrong. It's so deep. And so if you look at the mental model, I think this is where we need to change, and it hasn't changed. And so all the events that we see happening, I think to solve that, it's kind of, there's going to be another crisis. What have we learned from the previous crisis? Really, what have we learned? What are we learning from this? Are we learning from this? So what's missing is sort of this, what do we learn from this and what do we change because of this? And so what are we going to keep? So things have changed. I don't hear that at all. I don't hear only thing I hear is we're going to go back to the new normal, but nobody really knows what that is. There's no one telling us, like, the new normal is going to be, we're going to find out, but there's no real leadership in the sense of we need to change as a society, and we learning from this period. And so everything we've experienced and we've learned from this period, we should kind of take with us into the future. It's more like, we have to survive this. And so that's, I think they're doing in general, they're doing a really bad job. I think we're going to survive this, and we're going to take, because nobody knows what's going to happen. So we're like, oh, okay, so we're going to go this way. And I think they're doing a good job. I would have done the same, but it's underneath. There's something that is fundamentally wrong with the way we look at society and the way we look at what is important in life, and it's now, for instance, and I'll shut up, but one of the things that is a big discussion, it's like, how come, airplanes can start flying again? We can be all in this metal, tube together. Well, how come that's possible? But we can't give a concert. Only, if we can't go, we can't go to a concert or to theater, but they can put us in a metal tube. How come? So there's and then we all know, like, oh, it's money. It's money. It's the power of money. You see that kind of that very traditional way of thinking. Oh, it's money. It has the power. So everything that makes us money, that we think should kind of keep this economic model afloat that we have. That's going to be most important. But we have to change the economic model. There's no other way. That's I think nature told us, you have to change your economic model, and we're not doing. I don't think we're doing that. I don't think so.
You know what you're saying actually makes me quite hopeful, because I totally
was not
agree.
The intent.
I know.
Sad. Like, oh no, we're lost. We're doomed.
We're doomed. No, because from this, everybody indeed talks about the new normal, and we have to adapt to the new normal. And I'm wondering, indeed, what is the new normal? And what you say about airplanes is so true. I absolutely agree with that. And then there's a part of us that are still longing for, oh, can't we get back to normal the way it was? And which is also very strange. But what I hear underneath, just before I have to mention something else. I have been participating in several groups that are thinking about, okay, what will we take with us from this? And it started a couple of weeks ago that people started to think, okay, what do I want to take from this? What do I want to keep? What with this remote working, etc., and not being in traffic jams, and what do we want to keep, etc. And I noticed that mental exercise was really hard for people, and I was kind of discouraged, because I was thinking, okay, it's a design sprint, but it's not a sprint. It's going too slow, and according to my feeling. But now I listen to you and I realize asking ourselves to be able to think of the new whatever, if it's going to be normal or not, it's at this point, it's too hard for us. The first step in our journey is allowing for flexibility, allowing for taking into account other people's opinions, listening, being able to accept risk as a society. Because you were talking about, okay, I want to be able to do the things that I used to do before, the level of consumption, etc. I feel that if we already achieve that people are aware of the fact that a government is not always able to take the right decision, and a government also has to go to trial and error, and a government also makes mistakes, and if we always complain about, oh, they made a mistake, and oh, they put the elderly people in hospitals, and that contaminated them even more, etc. But now we realize altogether, yes, sometimes it isn't possible to do it absolutely right. And you have to allow yourself to make mistakes and learn from these mistakes, and this iteration that all designers talk about, and the learning from your user group, and that embracing risk instead of trying to control and fight and contain risk. If that first step is taken by all of us, that we are more understanding towards government and towards each other, I'm certainly thinking, oh wow, that would already be a huge step for us. It would, if all of us were starting design thinking, wouldn't that be great?
It's really interesting hearing your experiences there, and that the things that are coming into my mind are, one, have we got taking your economic model, Arne, there, that the where we've defining where the value lies is wrong, isn't it? Because your key workers, you know, the value lies in that person being at the bedside, you know, doing the core care of the patient. You know, in that moment, if you look at
we've applauded for them, right? We've applauded. You know, it's like let's go outside and applaud for them, and then you know, and my sister's a nurse, and no, but it's the funny thing is that then we kind of, you know, we're already kind of forgotten about them.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a funny comedian group in the UK. There's two guys, and you know, they were doing it on purpose, but saying, oh yes, yeah, I'm out every Thursday, as it was in the UK, you know, doing the clap thing, you know, and clearly I'm obviously making sure everybody sees me out there, you know, and you know, I'm not the first to go in at the end of it, you know. It's sort of making it the ludicrousness of, yes, we are, so the value we're giving to those people is that we stand outside our front door and, you know, clap or hit the pan, but from you know, the business model of the hospital is not recognizing that in the same sort of, that is the essence of the value they're providing in terms of that care, because whether it's, you know, the shareholders or whatever, you know, the sort of economic drivers are in that context, it's a very different, you know, looking at value lives in a very, very different way now.
No, exactly. So I think it's, I think we need to kind of look at systems and understand how these systems are, you know, are actually broken, because the value exchange between the different actors is not in balance. And that system is not just a country. That system is, it's a country, it is an industry, it's all the people in the country that take care of the elderly and the sick, but it's also the system that we kind of all industries are in. It's a global system that is broken and is not working for the people, and it is working for a few people. I think it's 2% of the people. It's working really well for them because they're collecting all the money, because that's what they do, collect money. I don't know why people collect money, but they collect money. And that gives them an amount of power that, and that somehow relates to the amount of money that you have collected, that kind of, you know, that's the amount of power that you get over people, which is totally weird if you think about it, because we're alive, we're living a life. And why does the guy who, I mean, usually, unfortunately, a guy has all the money, decides all this stuff? Well, how come? So it's this, again, it's this mental model that is, there's something really wrong with the way we kind of see ourselves as society, but we take it for granted. We're like, yeah, but that's how it's supposed to be. That's how it's always been. No, it's not. It's not how it's always been. It's not how it's supposed to be. It's the same with the economic model. It's just a you know, a bunch of agreements people made with each other. That's all it is. And but it's just like, oh, let's do it this way. Okay, and it worked for a while, and it made a few people really rich, and some society. I mean, you know, I live in a very rich country where there's well, I mean, there's poverty, obviously, but I mean, relatively low amount of it. But still, it kind of works as a model. I think the model, it doesn't work anymore, and I think a lot of people feel that. So looking at the system, so in Amsterdam, when we talk about hopeful, I am hopeful when I hear people talk about things like the donut economy being, you know, what they sort of implemented into the region of Amsterdam, which I don't understand how they're going to do it. I don't think that's really possible, but it's great that they're saying it, because all of a sudden there's influencers, people in sort of a power position, using the words donut economy to Kate Raworth, which I really, really, really support. And whether it's successful or not, it's the first. So there's little signs of, hey, we have to do things differently, and you can even say it out loud, right? So there is something. There are people who are kind of brave enough to say we have to do things differently, because the donut economy model is very different, because because that kind of addresses the mental model that is such a problem in our society, which is simple, very simple model of, if you have a business, you're only successful when you grow. You have to grow as a business. If you don't grow as a business, you're not a successful business. And we're supposed to grow. So we teach our students that that's how the model works. So you have to hire a lot of people, you have to have a lot of buildings, you have to blah, blah, that's make more money, because it's about and then you have to have investors, and you have to have shareholders, and then it's about shareholder value, and that's the trap, basically. So so Kate Rayworth's model, the main thing, at least I really like about the model, is about, it's not about growth, it's about balance, because nothing in nature grows forever. If it grows forever, we call it a cancer. That's what it is. So if you're Amazon and you're Apple, think about it. You're really, you might, you started as an company, but basically you're kind of sucking the value out of your ecosystem, and it's killing it. That's what it does. And you can't grow forever. What are we, how can you grow forever? What, in 20 years time, we're all working at Amazon? Oh no, because they're going to use artificial intelligence. It's all going to be robots. What are we going to do? But we're not going to get any money, because if you're not working, you're not a meaningful part of human society, or you're not contributing because you don't have a job. So you have to be punished. So again, there's this whole model of us and work, where business is supposed to be for people, but they're really not. They're just for a bunch of people on the top of the pyramid, because we still have the pyramid in our heads from the Industrial Revolution. It's still in our minds, but it's broken. So what we're feeling, and I think this Corona virus kind of, I don't know, it's like nature saying, hey, oh, hold on. It is that system that causes it. It is a system that makes it so difficult to learn from it and to change, because it's a system that's trying to survive. And we need to slowly start building a new system. And I think this is something where I haven't heard any politician really talk out loud about that, because you have to be extremely brave to tackle that. And that's such a difficult thing. And that's and again, using design thinking means we have to start experimenting and take some small steps and try and learn and, fail forward. But, I think, I don't know, I hope you're still hopeful. But
I am.
Yeah, but in my mind, it is there. So the hopeful part is, I hear little voices. There's
Exactly.
we call the weak signals, like, hey, there's stuff. And the other hopeful part is, if I feel this way, because I totally believe in that we are all kind of, this sounds really silly, maybe I don't, for a lack of better words, we're like little antennas.
Mm-hmm.
When we kind of pick up on, that wave I mentioned earlier. There is this wave, it's there. It's not us, it's when you feel that, it's not just you, it's all of us. We all feel it. There's a massive amount of people who feel the same way. Whether we have to write words for it, or the same words for it, the same language. Design thinking is just a language that helps, and language, we need language. Otherwise, we can't talk about it. It doesn't exist. So, but it's not design thinking. It's us trying to kind of sort of work or solve or be part of that change, or do something with that change. We all feel it's there. And I think that's hopeful in that sense that, if I'm very simple in the sense that if the weather is really beautiful and, I think, and it's a weekend, the day off, I go to the beach, and everyone goes to the beach. So that's basically that's what we are. Like, if you feel like, this is time for a change, trust this one. There's a lot of other people who feel exactly the same.
Yeah, it's what you say. If you say that everything is meant to die out, you can't grow forever. That's exactly what's happening.
Not meant to die out. No, it's
but that is what it evolves. Nature is about evolving, but the system we live in, or the society that we live in, and that has worked for many years in a sort of way, has we see that it is coming to an end and that it needs evolvement. And we are slowly starting to get ready for that thought. It goes with the heating of the planet as well. We are slowly starting to accept the fact that, yes, there's a need for change. And that first step is slowly being taken. And I think that everybody realizes now that the society in which we have been functioning needs certain changes. If not only for the, it could be for social reasons, but it could certainly be for biological reasons. I mean, the nature, etc. And I think the first step for that is empathy. In order to be able to accept someone else's view, if you are in the rich side of the society and you have to accept the less rich people's opinion, at least empathy is the first step. So what I'm saying to myself is, yes, there are signs of positive change and I shouldn't be that impatient. I should be happy with what is already there. That's, yeah.
You can be impatient.
The big change can feel so huge, which then puts, can scare a lot of people. It's too big. I don't, I can't.
Well, exactly.
Where to start. But if it's sort of thought more about little small steps everywhere, and your point of, you were making me think of the tipping point. Those antennae everywhere will come to a tipping point, and even if you take climate change, 5 years ago, oh yes, whatever. But it's sort of hitting a tipping point of no, we have to do something. We still don't know exactly what that is, but at least the thing. And I suppose listening to you both now, what's really interesting, I think, is that what this sort of corona situation has given us that we've never really had before is that it's sort of seeing what things might work better and what might not, because every country on the planet pretty much is now sort of where you've got the leadership sort of center stage, showing what they're doing in terms of response. And it is different, different countries are doing different things. You've got Trump obviously doing one thing, Bolsonaro down in South America doing another. You got, Jacinta Ardern doing something different in New Zealand, and Angela Merkel in Germany. And we've never yet had a situation, from what I can think of, really, certainly not in my lifetime, that everybody's facing the same problem, and we're seeing lots of different people tackling it in slightly different ways. So picking up on the points earlier on, I think that was making me think. So this is a unique learning opportunity that. We can see what's working, what's not, because everybody's trying it slightly differently. But the question is, are we going to learn it? That was really interesting earlier on, thinking, who is sitting down? Nobody in the UK I can think of is sitting down and saying, oh, well, or they might say, well, we'll set up some committee or other to do whatever. But that's not the sort of listening and learning exercise that would be so valuable to do right now, given that we can see what everybody is doing
it is such a unique thing, right? So unique is not only that because I have colleagues around the world. We're like, on all the continents, and all my colleagues are facing the same problem, which is I've never had that before. Whether they're my team in Brazil or my team in Singapore, we're all kind of the same. We have the same issues. But we have different governments, so they respond differently. So that's unique. But it's on an economical level, it's on a global level, it's on a national level, it's on a individual business level, and it's on a personal life level. It's my kids not going to school level. It's I'm not visiting my parents because they're in their 80s and want to be careful with them and can't hug them and stuff like that. So it's very, very different than the previous crises, but it's still, because it touches everything and on all the layers, which is amazingly impactful, I think, and I don't think we even realize the impact that this has and it's having on us and it's going to have on us. But so what I do, at least for me in my business and my community, I want to really look not just for what kind of say this is an earthquake, and there are certain buildings that are collapsing. You don't want to rebuild those same buildings. It's something we did do with the financial crisis. So we said, well, we're just going to rebuild them. You know, but you really don't want to, because the next crisis they're going to fall down again, because they can't they can't survive the earthquake. Then there's buildings that kind of stay upright because they're strong and they're robust and they're good. You can keep them, you don't throw them away because they survive the earthquake. But there's other things that have grown stronger because of this crisis, or any crisis, or in this case because of an earthquake. And those things are the things we should pay attention to, and we should kind of learn from, and those are the things we want to grow. So it's not about a crisis like this is not about surviving, the crisis. It is actually an immensely creative period where you can really design, create new things. This is the period where you need to kind of, so I know it's not completely the right kind of way of using the theory, but there's a theory called edge of chaos. And the edge of chaos, I know it's not exactly right, but it does kind of give you a sort of I think it's kind of inspirational if you look at it this way. It's about evolution and how things changed, and when things are, so the edge of chaos, basically what we do, there's these waves. So you go from very ordered, for instance, and then when it's too structured, it basically the ecosystem dies because it's too structured. It's not, there's no diversity, and without diversity, it dies. So the system doesn't work. But then you go to chaos, and you get to the edge of chaos just before the whole thing kind of falls apart, because there's no connection, and it's all kind of separate parts, and it's all chaos. That just before that, and that's what they call the edge of chaos, is where you are at your most creative. This is where, this is why in design and design thinking and creativity, you want to create a little bit of chaos. You want to create a little bit of not knowing what you're doing. And this is the moment where all your senses open, and like, what's going on? You get nervous, and it's like, oh, but that's when you are at your best creatively. And then you start building structures around that again, and then that kind of, and then it all starts all over again. That's basically, and we're at that kind of, in the way we're at that edge of chaos, when you don't know what's going to happen. Everything is a little bit in chaos, but we were there anyway before this COVID. We're dealing with a future that we have no clue. It's going really fast, and it's fueled by technology. I mean, artificial intelligence, quantum computing is going to change so many things, and it's already doing it. It's there. So we have to change our leadership. We have to change our mental models around what is a business, what is society, how do we, et cetera, et cetera. So that's it was there anyway. So, but this kind of came on top of all of that. So I would suggest this is an amazing creative moment in our lifetime, where we are going to develop new things, and we're to keep them after this is over. There's going to be, so the point is, because there's going to be another crisis, and there's going to be another, it might be global warming first, who knows, might be another thing, but there's going to be more. So it's the idea of, don't be so surprised by a crisis. There's going to be, there's going to be more, but we're always thinking like, okay, so we are sort of the tip of, we are at the end of evolution. That's us, kind of, evolution is done. It's all finished, it's all done, everything, and this is sort of the crowning, we're there, right? We made it. No, it's not. We're just part of a story that's never ending, and there's going to be so many other chapters of, and there's so many different kind of crises, and so it's already there. So what we can learn from this period is that, embrace it, embrace the complexity. Don't be afraid of, don't hide away from it. But don't keep running with your tasks and don't keep kind of that behavior of, I have to, read my email, be in meetings, blah, blah, blah. No, also just sit back and observe and look at what's happening and what is growing stronger. So for instance, can be simply, the old saying, like in a crisis, you know who your real friends are.
Yeah,
That's part of that. It's like, wait a minute, I should see these people more often. They really helped me in this moment. Those are the people you should kind of invest in after this crisis and from now on, but also in your business. There's certain things that are not working anymore. Don't invest in those. There are things that are still going strong. Fine, keep them. But there are other things that you might be gut feeling of, wait, we actually thinking about, I really want to do this. Do that, let this be a moment of reflection and of listening and of observing, and instead of kind of keep, we're all so busy, everybody's busy still, like with what, sit back, we don't have a language, that kind of helps us do nothing, because it all sounds negative. Procrastination is lazy, it's like, we don't have a language saying doing nothing is not doing nothing, because you have to reflect, and you're at your most creative when you let your brain wander, and your brain is not going to. You need to kind of have allow your brain to also process things, but we don't have a language for it. So this is a perfect time for us to kind of.
What I feel is that we are part of a certain generation. And we are still struggling with that idea of, are we going to continue in the rat race, or are we allowing ourselves to be more intuitive and be more acceptant of what we really want to do and the way we really want to follow? But I noticed that the idea of flexibility and really thinking about what is value to yourself is much more present with youngsters. I have two sons, one is 20, the other one is 22. And I noticed that they think about this crisis completely differently. First of all, they don't really see, it's strange to say this, but they don't really see it as a crisis. They see it as a part. It's, what you were saying, Arne, about the natural evolution and then coming from structured systems to chaos and then evolving into something new from that. They accept that much more than we do. And I was having a conversation with them lately, and we were talking about businesses going bankrupt probably, and how terrible that was going to be for everybody, losing their jobs and so on. And they were really looking at me saying, yes, but new businesses will grow, and something else will come up, and we will get through this. And they were much more confident and much more at ease with this idea of constant evolution. And we still speak in terms of, okay, there's going to be a new crisis, and then another one, and then another one. But they are speaking about, okay, there is going to be evolution and change. And that is something that I really enjoy watching, because it's a mentality of design thinkers that is becoming a common thing. I've noticed it indeed, because you say, Arne, this is something that has been going on for a while now. And it's true, when I do employee experience design, I see many differences between leadership styles. More traditional ones and more open ones. And whenever there's a possibility to allow communication and accept transition, it's much easier to install a new way of working and of co-creating within the company. And there also I see, this is a thing that I've seen evolving over the years, the readiness to allow that and get rid of the solid structure and be flexible, be sustainable. What's the word that we use now? Agile. It's to remain relevant and to remain agile. You have to allow this constant evolution, and that is something that I see more acceptance of.
Yeah, maybe it's so, and it's not this Corona crisis, but it pushed it. It kind of it's speeding things up.
Yes.
It's speeding things up in my business. It's speeding things up for your kids, and it's I'm not a futurist, but if I if I would look at the future and predict a sort of what the future business would look like, it's going to be more small businesses within an ecosystem, and looking for balance and looking for more meaning in their work. And it's not to say that there's not going to be, big evil corporates, if I want to put it that way, are not going to disappear, because they're very strong and they're very powerful. But I think what we're seeing is that the realization, first of all, there's going to be new leadership that have, people with a completely different way of looking at things. There's going to be technology allowing small businesses to have global impact. It's already happened. It's already happening. The Instagrams of this world. These are not traditional huge companies, but they have global impact. You can combine being happy at work and making some money. If you, I was kind of shown these report from the US, I think, where it says 90% of the employees are unhappy in their workplace. It's just like, that is something we really have to fix, because how come it is more important to keep that business alive than making the people that the business is actually for happy? Because business is for people. What else is it for? Mm-hmm. What else is it for? It is for people, right? It's for making sure that people can afford their, livelihood, their food, and their, bringing their kids to school, et cetera, et cetera. That's business for people. It's for nothing else. But we kind of have, again, we're back to the mental model. The idea is no, business is for maximizing profit. No, it's mm-hmm. not. No, it's not. But we're in the shareholders system, and I see that there's more and more companies emerging that kind of feel like, no, I don't have to grow, but I can have impact. I can grow my ecosystem, and we're going to work together. And, it's companies like Spotify. They're not a huge traditional company. They're not a Huawei or a Procter & Gamble, or they're relatively small, but they have an amazing amount of impact. And so I think something that I think is going to change with the next generation, I think it's already with my generation, but is this idea of life-work balance, yeah. which is I think that's fake news. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. And I always found that idea of work-life balance a strange thought.
It makes no sense whatsoever. As if you stop living when you go to
it's every hour of your day, and it's the activities that you do, and the things that interest you, and the things that give you a sense of accomplishment. And so I always thought it was a strange concept, the balance between life and work. So when you work, you don't live life and work.
But it allows you to say, I don't like my job, but it's just my work. I leave my work behind when I close the door. No, you don't. You're alive. This is your life. And so I think a lot of young people, also because we totally spoiled them, but I think they're also like, what? So a lot of companies will kind of find it very difficult. And, we work with a lot of HR departments where they struggle to get talent, and it's specifically talent that people have a choice. Of course, that's where it usually starts, but they find it difficult to kind of keep talent in the business, because if they don't have like a really good place for them to also be, dare I say it, happy in their work, like, oh, that's so that's so fuzzy and soft things. Like, no, it's like the biggest thing you have in life. trying to be happy. It's really difficult, and you can't be happy all the time, but you're trying. So if your company is not helping you and it doesn't care about your happiness, and you can actually have it, you can work at a company that does take care of that, and even at least tries to make you happy, or at least have you kind of do things that you care about, or make you feel meaningful because they have a purpose, and it's not as cynical, and it's not just about money, then they will work at another company. So it's very difficult to keep them in. So traditional corporates are struggling to kind of, all of a sudden they need to have like a purpose, you know, like the why, you know, it's like, but you never had one. Yeah, when you started like 80 years ago, but you totally forgot about it because you became a very cynical company that was just about careers and making money for a few people. And now all of a sudden you need a purpose. So they hire an agency to create a purpose statement. And I've done some in the past, like it's not real. It is not real. So if you're not an authentic company, then, oh, we have to be authentic. You know, you can't just, it's not a thing. It's not an add-on. You can't just say, oh yeah, tell the advertisement agency that we need to be more authentic. Like, no, that's not how it works. So we're going to see, my prediction, we're going to see a lot of new companies that are going to be very attractive for customers because they are authentic. And you have this feeling like, yeah, you know, we talk about COVID, but just really, you know, what happened at Facebook is actually, that is, you know, if I think back when I was having my first jobs at corporates, so you have the company, there's like a wall around the company, and then there's the outside world. You have the inside world and the outside world. These are totally different worlds. Like the inside world, you have a different voice, you have a different kind of house style and stuff, you know, total different things. And then you have the external world. These are two different things. Look at what happened at Facebook. There's employees at Facebook that weren't happy with the decisions that were made. They're going to, so they go to Twitter and they say, I'm not happy with this thing. And then there is this public fight, and they, you know, and everybody knows what's happening inside the company, and it's the same as out. So that is like a nightmare for traditional corporates. Like that's a nightmare. There's no such thing anymore as inside and outside of a company. So, you know, that is going to, you know, there's a fundamental shift, I think, for businesses. So I think there's so many things like that changing. And now you know, this just speeds it up, but it's a very exciting time to kind of, to be sort of in the business, and specifically when you're in helping companies change. This is an amazing time because there's so many things that we can kind of help them with and change. And yeah, so I am hopeful in that sense that I see so many young people starting businesses. We just have to teach them that they don't have to fall for the trap of, you're not going to be bought by Facebook. It's okay to start a bakery on the corner of wherever you live and do that the rest of your life and do it really well. That's okay. That is successful. That is amazing. You don't have to open a chain and be successful in the US. You don't have to. You can be happy and work with the people you love and have a healthy business and have a healthy, great life. Well, you know, what else is there? Yeah. So I think that kind of mental model should be there as well. Like that's the business too. You don't have to be a startup and then kind of get like investors and angel investors and who then own your business and gonna give you targets, and then you're gonna like in the eye you're under people, but you don't make any profit for years and you're under pressure, and then you get, you know, you die from a heart attack. You don't have to. Seriously.
Well, I don't, yeah. covered a lot of ground there. Covered a lot.
Yes, we are. Yeah.
I mean, I'm conscious of your time as well. I mean, that and sort of the whole conversation here, I think we've gone through a lot. Well, the sort of headlines that were coming to me were this whole piece about creativity. You know, it's actually the sort of Corona piece is highlighting that it's a tremendous time for creativity, but most, you know, a lot of people may not see it in that kind of way yet. And there's the whole piece about evolution and, you know, and trying things and making it and retrying it and iterating it and developing it. Although I did like the moment where you let me think that we were at the peak of evolution. You know, evolution is done. So that must mean the three of us are like, you know, the best human beings they could ever possibly be, because we are, you know, we have evolved as much as we ever need to. But and then, of course, obviously we're not. You said we weren't, so that, but I like that moment at the time. But I think the other thing that came out a lot there was about the learning linked into this, you know, and the continuous learning. It's okay to fail, and you learn from that and you take on the new thing, which we also covered the changing the models, particularly what you ended up there with, and about the you know, what new people are coming into the workplace, their expectations should be not what we've kind of got into the habit of thinking the successful economic model looks like, you know, like the worldwide chain of whatever, you know, your particular passion, delivering that in your space, that is also economic, what was success, I shouldn't use the word economic, but so, but what was interesting there in all of this actually was that this whole kind of, there's like a two-track thing going on for what we've been talking about. There's a sense of things are speeding up and need to speed up, you know, not to do things so slowly anymore as we have in the past, you know, and the burning platform of Corona is just the latest one, I suppose. But on the flip side, it's all about slowing it way down as well, and just stopping. And you know, I don't know whether some people might say, well, that's part of mindfulness, or you know, all those sorts of things, but that sort of just stop and absorb and you know, think about what's going on, and that two speed piece is very interesting. And how can people get their heads around it when it's just not back to the models? You know, we're stuck in some very deep rooted models of thinking in society that are going to make it very hard. So a huge amount of stuff in there, really. You can go, I think I'll go back to yes, both of your points, and Valerie's hopeful. I think yes, I think I'm hopeful. I don't know the answer but I'm hopeful too. So if you were, from all of those things we've just sort of gone through, what's the one thing that just kind of comes into your mind now as to, you know, your reflection on our conversation, if you like, just to sort of round it all off?
What I think is essential, and it is there, and everybody knows it. It's the acceptance of the need for flexibility, the acceptance of change, and that is, I think, an essential mental model shift. And a lot of things come with that. The idea of embracing risk and allowing failure and learning from anything you do, and indeed looking at things in different perspectives. What is success? And it should not always be the big corporates, etc. And that acceptance of different opinions, and the flexibility of mind to be able to adapt to a new situation. I think that is, and we are learning that. We as a society are learning to do that. Yes, the system we had is not fulfilling everything that should, and yes, we are ready to change it. And that is why I am so hopeful for the moment, because finally we're getting there, that we are allowing us to think freely. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think that for me, although I don't think we that's something we said, but something that I think you mentioned hopeful, and I so one thing that made me hopeful is that you know, when we started talking, we talked about what went right in our countries, at least. But one thing that made me very hopeful is that a lot of people kind of sort of did what they had to do, not because of themselves, but because they had to take care of other people. So the powerful thing was that it wasn't about you, it was about it. You're not wearing a mask for you, you're wearing a mask because you're protecting other people, you know. So that is something that I thought was very powerful, and it made me hopeful, because that's the reason why a lot of people complied, not because they were worried about themselves, but just they didn't want to infect other people. So this idea of I don't want to infect you. So I have a lot of people around me that friends or people I barely know, or family. All of those people, when they approach you, they meet you, they say, "How do we say hello? Do I do a? Can I?" So a good friend of mine, I had a meeting with him yesterday, and he said, "Can I give you a hug, or don't we do that?" And I said, "Of course you can give me a hug, but it's not because he cares about himself for it, but he wants me to kind of, he acknowledges me. That is so not selfish, which I thought like that gives me hope.
That gives us all hope, yes. That gives us all hope, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for your time today. It's been a really fascinating conversation and loads of things to think about and take forward. So
thank you very much.
Thank you
for having us.
Enjoyed it.